This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Paul Hansen. Thurley, Ruxton by Philip Verrill Mighels. Chapter 37. The Baron and a Knight. That morning brought little of comfort or hope to Alice Van Kirk, and nothing of relief to Robley Stuyvesant. No news had arrived. The mystery of Thurley's disappearance and whereabouts remained absolutely unbroken. Stuyvesant felt doubly despairing. He had learned sufficient from the conference with the Baron to realize that Princess Thurley was tremendously essential to the integrity and future of Herzegovina, and was thoroughly convinced that should she be discovered and returned after this, she must soon complete her alliance with the youthful Duke and completely withdraw from his own existence. Nevertheless, his fanatical desire to serve her, to be, if possible, the one particular knight to reach her side and deliver her out of whatsoever dangers might impend, increased upon him hourly. If the fates decreed that his love must be for ever hopeless, it would not be thereby lessened. Come what might, that day in the park had knitted a bond between them that nothing could ever wholly sever. A strange conviction that Thurley's doom hung close and loose above her head had haunted his thoughts since the very hour when he heard of the way she had gone. He had fretted with wild and increasing impatience because of this conviction. He was nearly beside himself, to be baffled, impotently ignorant of what he ought to do. This enforced inactivity and stupid waiting while a night went by seemed enough to drive him crazy. Of what avail was his eager love when he made not the slightest move? Stifling an hourly repeated impulse to seek the aid of the city's police, he could scarcely wait this Sunday morning for the time appointed to meet the Baron at his rooms. When he came there at last, the Baron was no wiser concerning Thurley than at Alice's the previous night. Two of his men were still to report. He could only advise further patience. Wank was still away. At 11 o'clock his two men came with vital news and were interviewed in private. They had found Princess Thurvinia. That royally erratic young person was lying dangerously ill, unknown and unsuspected, at the home of some loyal if humble subjects of Herzegovina, living in unromantic Weehawken. She was unaware of the presence either of Wank, the Baron, or the Duke in New York, and was too reduced to care. Vastly disturbed by this intelligence, and yet in a measure relieved, Hotchhouse was still tremendously concerned with the fate of Thurley Ruxton. The princess might yet succumb and leave his kingdom bereft, while the young Duke, ignorant of Thurley's disappearance, was still persistent in his declarations that he loved no one else in the world. There was nothing to communicate to Stuyvesant. Indeed, the Baron's perturbation grew with the very fact his men had brought him no report concerning the abducted girl. He had much to do to maintain the secrecy, hedging the princess about, to provide her the finest medical attendance, to arouse the Duke to his highest sense of duty, and, if possible, aid with all his power in saving the girl he knew to be in imminent danger of her life, if not already slain. He could only tell Stuyvesant to wait. Later he went to Weehawken, skilfully disguised, since he felt convinced that his movements were closely observed by Zagorski's agents, doubtless on his trail. At 3 o'clock a message from out in Long Island arrived for the young Duke Karl. It was quietly intercepted by the Baron's agents and brought to his quarters at once, Karl Wilhelm none the wiser. Half an hour later the Baron returned, and the message was placed in his hands. Stuyvesant, having been twice to Alice's, was once more waiting, and growing momentarily more desperate. Wank had not only appeared, but had not sent the slightest word. No sooner had Hotchhouse glanced the message over than he strode to Stuyvesant's room. He was thoroughly aroused, but incisively keen of wit. He had leaped at the truth of things as a tiger leaps on its prey. "Stuyvesant, here it is at last," he said, as Robley sprang to his feet, prepared to blurt out his impatience with methods so lacking in action. "I rather thought that something in this manner might appear, but I didn't expect. Man, what do you think of this?" He held up the note to read. "What is it? Something from Miss It's a bit of correspondence addressed to Grand Duke Karl, and intercepted by my orders," interrupted the Baron. "Listen. Excellency, I have found Miss Thurley, and send you immediate words that you may hasten to her rescue. For you alone will she trust, so great is her present apprehension for her life, and so great is the warrant for her fears. She is a captive in the hands of political enemies of Herzegovina, at a small village called North Winnig, on Long Island, 100 miles out near by, and is at an old mill 1 mile to the eastward of the village, where she informs me one of the band has revealed a secret loyalty and desire to render her assistance, though through him only will her rescue be possible. You must come alone tonight at 9 o'clock, bringing no assisting friends nearer than the village proper, lest you excite suspicion and thereby sacrifice her life on the instant. Be under the window at the stroke of 9, the window at the rear of the mill, and do not, for the love of heaven, attempt her rescue by force of numbers, or come otherwise than alone. The one man loyal to her Highness is expected to go out tonight and return at 9. Hence, one man approaching will arouse no suspicion. I shall await your advent myself in the village. For God and Herzegovina, Otto Wank. Postscript. I enclose confirmatory note from Stuyvesant, white with excitement, and crouching as if for a spring of action, snatched the paper from the Baron's fingers. "Pardon," he said, "but where is it? Where? Village of North "My dear young friend," admonished the Baron quietly. "Wait, don't you see?" "Wait," said Stuyvesant wildly. "I've done nothing but wait all day. I want to get started. Don't you understand?" "I do," said the Baron, "perfectly. There is more. You have not heard at all. This also was enclosed." He held up Thurley's note and read it, puzzled at once by its presence in the letter and the method of the address. "Dear Karl Robley." "What?" cried Stuyvesant, more excited than before. "It's half addressed to me. Perhaps she thought that Baron, I'll take a force of men. I mean that I shall go in my car to fetch her back. There may be no railway in Mighels. Can your men be ready at once?" "Mr. Stuyvesant, sit down," commanded the Baron sternly. "Can't you see this is merely a trap?" Stuyvesant halted in the act of throwing on his coat, and the sable trailed on the floor. "A trap? It's Thurley's appeal, and it's half addressed to me. I don't understand. There's nothing to do but get there as soon as the Lord will let me. Why should you call it a trap?" "This letter was sent to the Duke. I told you that." "It was, but right here, Robley. His name isn't it's signed here, Otto Wank." "Your man, I know, but nevertheless." "That's the lie of it, man," the Baron interrupted. "Wank, it is true, is over there somewhere, and has made no report, but he's under another name, and on no account would send me a line, or a line to the Duke, with his own name actually attached. You mean? I mean, that was my orders, absolute orders. Furthermore, he would never, in a case like this, send a line to anyone save myself, while it is perfectly preposterous for him to urge the Duke into such a noose as this. A trap, a clumsy trap, and this sort of bait I've expected." Stuyvesant paled. "But, good heavens, Baron, how could this note from Thurley, not a forgery, you think?" "I am not prepared to say. It may be genuine, it may be all a lie. This wank note is a forgery, and clever as the fiends. It sums up all a trap, my son, to compass a double murder." Stuyvesant went white about the mouth. "Murder? Sit down," urged the Baron more quietly. "This is a matter of life and death. To the beautiful woman I feel you would serve to the utmost limits of your strength. My life, I mean it, sir." "Then, in the name of the Heaven you implored, be calm a little, and assist me as far as you may." "You think she's alive? She may be there, that village, North Winnig?" "It is the barest hope in the world. It is far more likely she is far away in another direction, God alone knows where, and yet it is all we have at present, and you might at least investigate, though the dangers, I warn you, are great." The younger man was confident. "I'll simply take a dozen men, picked fighters, gun fighters at that, and clean up." "So I feared," it was dryly remarked, and the Baron screwed up his mouth. "If she is there at all and alive, your course would ring her knell the instant your men appeared. It is no idle threat, that part of the letter that warns the Duke he must be certain to come alone, his friends no closer than the village. Of what avail are friends a mile away? Then I'll go alone, though all the demons out of the Hades, and be quietly captured there beneath the window. Then they find you are not the Duke. What then? And you wouldn't expect, with a letter as false as this, that Miss Thurley, as you call her, would be standing at the window waiting to leap into your arms?" Stuyvesant saw the situation, yet clung to a species of hope. "Good heavens, man, do you expect me to do nothing? If she's there at all, and in momentarily danger of her life, I've got to take a chance, that's all." "And give yourself none," commented the Baron dryly. "If you mean to help in this affair, go over, if you please, to North Winnig with your car and your man, and ascertain, if possible, whether or not any strangers have recently come to that neighbourhood in particular circumstances, and are occupying any old mill. And then report to me, or at most adopt some sane expedient for the safe delivery of the captive, should you find her actually imprisoned and alive thereabouts." "But you?" demanded Stuyvesant. "In the meantime you are certainly as deeply interested, perhaps more deeply interested. Where will you be with your men? What will they be doing?" "Scouring the darkest, farthest corners of all New York," said the Baron laconically, "endeavouring to retrieve any time we may lose by sending you off to this village." "Then you think she isn't there?" The Baron smiled. "It would be almost too good to be true." "I shall go and see," said Stuyvesant. "God grant I may find her safe." He flung on his coat, which had fallen to a chair. "Amen to that," answered the Baron, his fine old mouth slightly twitching and his eyes suspiciously moist. Then he placed his hands on Robley's shoulders. "Don't take the slightest unnecessary risk, my boy," he added. Serve her as far as you like, with your life if you must, but be certain first it is a service. My affection for you is great. To sacrifice another life, youth, take no risks, that can do no good in the end." Stuyvesant was greatly affected. His fine young face took on an expression approximating sublimity. "I would go through anything to serve her," he said simply, "and because she has written 'Robley' here, I am certain she lives, and sent this note and expects, well, someone at 9 o'clock to night." The Baron could say no more. He wrung the young man's hand with tremendous intensity and watched him go out at the door. Then he sank on a chair, limp and wretched, staring at the carpet. He knew what the dangers were into which this youth would plunge, the dangers into which, he confessed, he had feared Thurley Ruxton would fall. "God help us all," he murmured. "I must serve Herzogossa first." End of chapter 37.